Police! Her face went white as printer paper. That's when I knew Amelia was going to do it. Mr. Henderson, all puffed up like a poisoned toad, was threatening the old woman over a measly $4.75. Her trembling hands, the lost look in her eyes. Amelia saw her own grandma there. Crap wages, looming eviction. Amelia had every reason to save her last $10. But she stepped up, paid the bill. A kindness so quiet, so broke, it could break your heart. What Henderson didn't see, what Amelia couldn't know, was that the old woman's son was watching. A billionaire, no less. And he doesn't just see charity, he sees something more. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. Police! Her face went white as printer paper. That's when I knew Amelia was going to do it. Mr. Henderson, all puffed up like a poisoned toad, was threatening the old woman over a measly $4.75. Her trembling hands, the lost look in her eyes. Amelia saw her own grandma there. Crap wages, looming eviction. Amelia had every reason to save her last $10. But she stepped up, paid the bill. A kindness so quiet, so broke, it could break your heart. What Henderson didn't see, what Amelia couldn't know, was that the old woman's son was watching. A billionaire, no less. And he doesn't just see charity, he sees something more. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. Amelia's alarm clock, a relic from her college days, blared its insistent 5:15 a.m. summons. It dragged her from a fitful slumber, a nightly battle against the relentless anxieties that clung to her like a second skin. Another day, another mountain to climb. Outside, Portland was shrouded in its usual pre-dawn gloom, a dreary drizzle mirroring the landscape of her life, bleak, damp, and unending. Her first conscious act was checking on Leo. His small body lay still beneath a faded dinosaur print comforter, his breathing a shallow, almost imperceptible rhythm. The blue plastic of his inhaler sat sentinel on his nightstand, a constant, stark reminder of the medical bills that piled up on her kitchen counter, each one a fresh assault on her already depleted resources. Leo's asthma, a persistent shadow, was exacerbated by the dampness of their poorly insulated apartment, the stress clinging to the air itself. The kitchen was a monument to scarcity, a half-empty carton of milk, 3 lonely eggs, a browning head of lettuce, and a jar of pickles, a testament to her dwindling funds. Looming over it all, a crimson final notice from their landlord, Mr. Gable, a coiled serpent promising eviction if $1,100 wasn't coughed up by week's end. Panic clawed at her throat, a familiar, unwelcome visitor. She forced herself to breathe, mimicking the exercises she taught Leo during his asthma attacks. Slow, deliberate breaths, the kind that didn't come easy. Her purse, a worn leather bag older than Leo, held the sum total of her immediate future, $10, a single crumpled bill nestled amongst old receipts and stray crayons. $10 stood between her and utter destitution until Friday's paycheck, which was already earmarked for Gable, the pharmacy, and the looming electric bill. "It's okay," she whispered, the mantra barely audible above the pounding of her heart. "We'll figure it out. We always do." A thin shield against the despair threatening to engulf her. Amelia had once dreamt of flour-dusted aprons and the symphony of whisks and ovens. She'd been accepted to the Oregon Culinary Institute, her fingers itching to sculpt delicate pastries, to master the art of a perfect soufflé. But then Leo had arrived, a sweet, unexpected blessing that irrevocably altered the course of her life. His father, a fleeting romance, vanished like smoke, leaving Amelia to navigate the treacherous waters of single motherhood. The dream of culinary artistry was shelved, replaced by the harsh, grinding reality of waitressing at the daily grind. She scribbled a note for Mrs. Peterson, their kind elderly neighbor, who watched Leo until his school bus arrived. "Leo has lunch. Inhaler before the bus. Love you, little lion. Be brave, Mom." A quick kiss on his forehead, the scent of innocent sleep clinging to his hair, fueled her resolve. Her 2002 Honda Civic, affectionately nicknamed the Prince, protested with a series of sputtering coughs before grudgingly surrendering to ignition. The gaslight, a constant fixture for the past 2 days, mocked her with its persistent glow. She coaxed it along, each movement a prayer, hoping to reach the daily grind without running dry. The $10 bill in her wallet felt less like currency and more like a fragile lifeline, stretched thin and frayed at the edges. Gas money, milk money, survival money. The daily grind was an exercise in irony. The air, thick with the intoxicating aroma of freshly ground espresso and warm, buttery pastries, masked the frantic energy that pulsed beneath the surface. For the staff, it was a constant scramble, a ballet of clattering ceramic, hissing steam wands, and the relentless, demanding chime of the order bell. Mr. Henderson, the manager, greeted Amelia with his usual sour disposition. "Evans, 3 minutes late," he grumbled, his eyes never leaving his clipboard. "Car trouble, Mr. Henderson," she offered, the practiced lie rolling off her tongue. The truth, the agonizing minutes spent coaxing her car back to life, wasn't an acceptable excuse. "Section C, and push those pumpkin spice muffins. They're yesterday's." Amelia plastered on her customer service smile and plunged into the morning rush. Orders, refills, clearing tables. A whirlwind of motion and calculated efficiency. She moved with a practiced grace born of years of experience, her mind a constant calculator of tips and tables, always striving to stay one step ahead. Around 10:30 a.m., as the initial surge subsided, an elderly woman, Elizabeth, shuffled in. She was small and fragile, draped in a faded lilac coat that seemed to swallow her whole. Her white hair was disheveled, and her pale blue eyes held a distant, almost ethereal quality. She settled at a small table in Amelia's section, near the window where the rain continued its melancholic descent. "Good morning," Amelia greeted her, notepad in hand. "What can I get for you today?" Elizabeth looked up, her gaze unfocused for a moment before settling on Amelia. "Oh, hello, dear. Just a coffee. Black, please, and perhaps one of those nice-looking scones." "The blueberry scone is fresh out of the oven," Amelia offered, a small, harmless lie. They were from yesterday, but Elizabeth looked like she needed something warm and comforting. "Oh, that would be lovely," Elizabeth replied, her voice soft and papery. Amelia delivered the coffee and scone a few minutes later. Elizabeth was staring out the window, a wistful expression on her face. "Here you are," Amelia said gently, placing the items on the table. "Let me know if you need anything else." Elizabeth lingered for over an hour, sipping her coffee and nibbling on the scone. She didn't read or use a phone, just sat there, a quiet island of stillness amidst the cafe's bustling chaos. Amelia refilled her coffee once, unbidden. There was a vulnerability about her, a fragility that resonated deep within Amelia, reminding her of her own grandmother. Later, Amelia noticed Elizabeth gathering her things. She fumbled in her large worn handbag, her brow furrowing in concentration. Lipstick, keys, reading glasses, a crumpled tissue all emerged but not what she sought. Her search grew frantic, her breathing shallow and panicked. Henderson, ever the watchful vulture, noticed. "Evans, is that table in Section C going to pay? Or just camp out all day?" He barked, his voice sharp enough to shatter glass. Amelia approached the table, a knot forming in her stomach. "Is everything all right?" Elizabeth looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. I can't find my purse, my wallet. I'm sure I had it when I left the house. My son Robert, he always tells me to double check, but I get so forgetful." Her voice cracked, her hands trembled. "I am so sorry. I don't know what to do." The simple declaration of a lost wallet hung heavy in the air, a minor inconvenience for most, but a moment of profound shame and fear for Elizabeth. She looked utterly humiliated, her dignity crumbling before Amelia's eyes. Henderson lumbered over, his face a mask of impatience. "Is there a problem here? She's just misplaced her wallet." "Mr. Henderson," Amelia intervened, trying to shield Elizabeth from his accusatory glare. "Misplaced it or forgot it?" he sneered, his eyes narrowed. "Listen, lady, this isn't a charity. The bill is $4.75. Coffee and a scone. You either pay it or I'm calling the police." The word police hit Elizabeth like a physical blow. The color drained from her face and her trembling intensified. "Oh no, please, there's no need for that. I can call my son. I just need to remember his number. It's so hard to remember things these days." Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks, disappearing into the folds of her coat. The scene was excruciating. Other customers were starting to stare. Amelia felt a surge of anger toward her boss and a deep, aching empathy for Elizabeth. She saw her own grandmother in those tear-filled eyes, saw the fear of being old, confused, and alone. In that instant, a choice crystallized. Her pocket held her $10 bill, her lifeline. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to protect it. It wasn't her problem. She had her own crisis, her own child. But looking at Elizabeth, being publicly shamed over 475, she saw Leo and the world she wanted him to inhabit, a world of kindness and compassion. What was survival worth if she lost her humanity in the process? The internal battle lasted mere seconds. Police! Her face went white as printer paper. That's when I knew Amelia was going to do it. Mr. Henderson, all puffed up like a poisoned toad, was threatening the old woman over a measly 475, her trembling hands, the lost look in her eyes. Amelia saw her own grandma there. Crap wages, looming eviction. Amelia had every reason to save her last $10. But she stepped up, paid the bill, a kindness so quiet, so broke, it could break your heart. What Henderson didn't see, what Amelia couldn't know, was that the old woman's son was watching, a billionaire no less. And he doesn't just see charity. He sees something more. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. It's okay, Mr. Henderson. I've got it, Amelia said, her voice surprisingly firm. Henderson's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. You've got it, Evans. You can barely afford your bus pass. I said I've got it, she repeated, extracting the bill. It felt like lead in her hand. She walked to the register, the eyes of the cafe boring into her back. She rang up the sale for $4.75 and surrendered her lifeline. A bizarre, heartbreaking transaction. She retrieved the change, a meager $5.25. A bizarre and heartbreaking transaction. She knelt beside Elizabeth, who was still weeping softly. It's all taken care of, she whispered, placing a comforting hand on Elizabeth's arm. Please don't you worry about a thing. Elizabeth looked at her, her eyes a mixture of shock and profound gratitude. But you shouldn't have. That was your money. It's just coffee, Amelia said with a shrug, attempting to downplay the magnitude of her sacrifice. My treat. Do you need me to help you call your son? Or would you like me to call a taxi? Oh no, dear, thank you. You've done more than enough, Elizabeth whispered, wiping her eyes. She squeezed Amelia's hand tightly. You have a good heart. A very, very good heart. Thank you. With a final grateful look, Elizabeth gathered her handbag and slowly made her way out of the coffee shop, disappearing into the gray, rainy street. Amelia watched her go, a hollow ache in her stomach. She was down to $5.25 and didn't know how she would get gas to drive home. But as she cleared the empty coffee cup and the plate with a few scone crumbs, a quiet, unshakable conviction settled within her. She had done the right thing. Unbeknownst to Amelia, a man at a corner table had witnessed the entire exchange. Julian Ashworth, a billionaire recluse, had been observing. He hadn't looked at his phone, his gaze fixed, his expression unreadable as he witnessed Henderson's cruelty, Elizabeth's distress, and Amelia's quiet, costly grace. Julian Ashworth valued anonymity, allowing him to observe without being observed. He'd been checking every cafe in a 5-mile radius after his mother, Elizabeth, who suffered from early-stage Alzheimer's, had wandered out. Seeing her through the window had flooded him with relief. He'd decided to watch her, allowing her a semblance of independence. Then the scene at the counter unfolded, igniting a fierce wave of protective anger towards his mother and profound respect for Amelia's empathy. He saw the waitress use what was probably her own grocery money to protect his mother's dignity. He felt a profound sense of shame that a stranger had shown his mother more compassion than he had in months, assuaging his guilt with money. This young woman, who clearly had so little, had given what she couldn't afford. As Amelia cleared his mother's table, Julian discreetly flagged her down. "Check, please," he said, his voice quiet and even. Amelia brought the check for his single espresso. Julian placed his credit card and a crisp $100 bill on top. But $100 felt like an insult. He returned it to his wallet. He took out his pen and wrote $1,000 on the tip line and signed J. Ashworth, adding, "For your kindness." He walked out, his mind already formulating a grander plan. A few minutes later, Amelia came to clear the table and found the receipt. She froze. Her eyes scanned the numbers. $1,000. It had to be a mistake. With trembling hands, she showed it to Sarah, the other waitress. "No way!" Sarah breathed, her eyes wide. "Amelia, that's 1,000. Amelia took the receipt to Mr. Henderson, her heart hammering. "Mr. Henderson, I think this customer made a mistake." Henderson snatched it. He stared, jaw tightening with envy. He ran the card. Approved. "No mistake," he grunted, returning the slip. "Credit card tips are paid out in cash at the end of the shift. Don't expect this to happen again." For the rest of the day, Amelia moved in a daze. $1,000. Rent, medicine for Leo, groceries, gas, a buffer against the terror. As she drove home that evening, having filled her tank for the first time in months, she cried tears of relief. She thought of the quiet man and sent a silent thank you into the universe, unaware it was only the opening gesture. The next 2 days felt like she could finally breathe. The rent was paid, groceries bought, Leo's prescriptions refilled, and even a new set of Legos. A flicker of hope emerged from the darkness. She'd explained the generous tip to Leo as a fairy tale. A kind man saw Mommy do a kind thing, and he gave her a magical reward, she'd said. Leo had simply nodded. To a child, magic was an everyday occurrence. It was a Saturday afternoon, her day off. The rain had stopped, and a weak autumn sun filtered through the clouds. Amelia was on the floor, helping Leo with his Legos, when a sharp, authoritative knock echoed from the door. This was different, precise and commanding. Amelia's heart fluttered. She opened the door a crack. A man stood in the hallway, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, his shoes polished, holding a sleek leather briefcase. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Wall Street boardroom. "Amelia Evans?" he asked, his voice polite but professional. "Yes," Amelia said, clutching the doorknob. "My name is Marcus Davis. I am a representative for Mr. Julian Ashworth. May I have a moment of your time?" The name meant nothing. Then she thought of the credit card slip. J. Ashworth. A jolt. This had to be about the tip. Maybe he wanted it back. Is there a problem?" she whispered. Mr. Davis offered a reassuring smile. "Quite the opposite, Miss Evans. Mr. Ashworth was very impressed by your conduct the other day at the Daily Grind. He has asked to meet with you." "Meet with her? Why?" "He would prefer to explain that himself. He has sent a car for you. It's waiting downstairs. He understands this is highly unusual, but it is a matter of great importance. You will not be inconvenienced, and you will be returned home within 2 hours." He glanced at Leo. "Your son is welcome to come, of course. There is a tablet with games and cartoons for him in the car." Amelia's mind reeled. A car, a meeting, Julian Ashworth, a scene from a movie. Part of her wanted to slam the door and hide. Too strange, too far outside her reality. But another part, desperate for change, was intrigued. What did she have to lose? "Okay," she heard herself say. "Just give me a minute to get our shoes." 15 minutes later, Amelia was in the back of a black Mercedes-Benz S-Class sedan. The interior smelled of leather and was silent. Leo, headphones on, was absorbed in a brand new iPad. They drove into downtown Portland, pulling up in front of the Ashworth Tower. As she looked at the gleaming edifice of glass and steel that scraped the sky, Amelia had served coffee to hundreds who worked there, but had never imagined entering its imposing doors. Mr. Davies led them to a private elevator. He pressed a button for the penthouse floor, a floor with a gold star instead of a number. As the elevator ascended silently, Amelia felt a growing sense of vertigo that had nothing to do with the height. Her life, it seemed, was about to change. She just had no idea how. Gleaming edifice of glass and steel that scraped the sky. Amelia had served coffee to hundreds of people who worked in that building, but she had never imagined she would one day walk through its imposing front doors. Mr. Davies led them to a private elevator. He pressed a button for the penthouse floor, a floor with no number, just a single gold star. As the elevator ascended silently and swiftly, Amelia felt a growing sense of vertigo that had nothing to do with the height. Her life, it seemed, was about to change. She just had no idea how profoundly. The private elevator ascended the Ashworth Tower in an unnerving whisper, soft silence. There was no gentle hum of machinery, no music, just a seamless, swift climb that made Amelia's ears pop. With each passing floor, she felt as if she were leaving her own world further and further below, rising into an atmosphere too thin for her to breathe. She clutched Leo's hand, his small, warm fingers, a grounding anchor in the dizzying unreality of the moment. She felt profoundly out of place in her slightly faded jeans and the best sweater she owned, a simple gray knit that suddenly felt shabby and worn. The elevator doors opened not into a hallway, but directly into the sky. That was the first impression. A room made of air and light, a sprawling office that was less a workspace and more a testament to power occupying the entire top floor. The floor-to-ceiling windows on all sides offered a godlike 360-degree view of Portland. The Willamette River snaked below like a silver ribbon, and the distant peak of Mount Hood stood sharp and majestic against the clear autumn sky. The space was furnished with a stark, elegant minimalism, a massive desk of polished chrome and dark wood that seemed to float a seating area with low-slung leather sofas, and a single dramatic sculpture of twisted bronze that dominated one corner. A man stood by the far window, his back to them, silhouetted against the breathtaking vista. He was looking out over the city, his hands clasped behind his back. As the elevator doors chimed softly, he turned. It was a jolt, a sudden sharp intake of breath for Amelia. It was him, the quiet man from the coffee shop. But the man who stood before her now was not the unassuming customer in the simple gray suit. In this space, his element, he was transformed. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and perfectly tailored dark trousers, he radiated a quiet, formidable confidence that seemed to charge the very air around him. The anonymity he had worn in the cafe was gone, replaced by an aura of immense authority. "Miss Evans, Amelia, thank you for coming," he said. His voice was the same, come even, and resonant. He offered a surprisingly warm smile that didn't quite reach his intense, observant eyes. He then crouched down slightly, bringing himself closer to Leo's level. "And you must be Leo. I hear you're quite the Lego master. Is it true you built a Mark 47 Star Blaster with a custom hyperdrive?" Leo, who had been hiding behind his mother's leg, peeked out, his eyes wide with astonishment. "How do you know?" "A good commander knows the talents of his allies," Julian said with a straight face. "Mr. Davies, my chief of staff here, has a collection of architectural models in the adjoining room that might interest you. There's a scale model of the entire city of Tokyo. I think you'll find its structural integrity impressive." The invitation, spoken in a language Leo understood perfectly, worked like a charm. As Mr. Davies led a now chattering Leo into an adjacent room, the heavy glass doors sliding shut behind them, an intense silence fell. The vast office suddenly felt smaller. The space between Amelia and Julian Ashworth charged with unanswered questions. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the leather sofas. Amelia perched on the edge of the cushion, her back ramrod straight. "Mr. Ashworth," she began, her voice coming out stronger than she expected. "I came because I assume this is about the tip you left. It was an incredible gesture, but it was far too much. I can't possibly keep it. I think you must have made a mistake." He sat in the chair opposite her, not behind his desk, a choice that made the encounter feel more personal and somehow more intimidating. He shook his head slowly. "The only mistake I made all that day, Amelia was not leaving more. The $1,000 was an impulse, a paltry, inadequate gesture. What I want to talk to you about is something far more significant. But first I owe you an explanation and an apology." Amelia stared at him, completely baffled. "An apology for what?" He leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees, and his gaze was so direct it felt as though he could see every worry and fear she'd ever had. "The elderly woman at the coffee shop, the woman you helped. Her name is Elizabeth Ashworth." He paused, letting the name hang in the air for a beat. "She is my mother." The words struck Amelia with the force of a physical blow. The room seemed to tilt, the stunning view outside, blurring into a meaningless swirl of color. His mother, the frail, confused woman in the lilac coat, was the mother of this powerful, enigmatic billionaire. The scene from the cafe replayed in her mind, now cast in a completely different, surreal light. The manager's cruelty, the woman's tears, her own small act of charity. All of it had been witnessed by the woman's son, a man who could likely buy the entire city block without a second thought. She has early onset Alzheimer's, Julian continued, his voice, losing its corporate polish, becoming softer, laced with a raw personal pain. Who she is? It comes and goes in waves. Before this disease began its cruel theft, she was the sharpest, most vibrant woman I knew. She taught literature at Reed College. She could quote Shakespeare and argue politics with a fear that could intimidate senators. Now some days she forgets my name. He looked away towards the window and Amelia saw not a billionaire, but just a son struggling with a grief that had no end. That morning she slipped out of her home. Her caregiver called me in a panic. I spent 2 hours driving the streets, my mind imagining every worst-case scenario. When I finally saw her through the window of your coffee shop, the relief I felt was indescribable. But it was immediately followed by a profound sense of shame. He met her eyes again, and his were filled with self-remission. I watched that manager threaten her. I watched him publicly humiliate my mother, the woman who raised me, who taught me about dignity and compassion, and I did nothing. I sat there frozen in my corner, worried about causing a scene, about being recognized. In my world, every action is calculated. Every move has a ripple effect. I've become so accustomed to strategy that I've forgotten how to simply act. You didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate. You saw a person in pain and you helped. He shook his head, a look of genuine wonder on his face. After I left, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had my people discreetly look into your situation. I hope you can forgive the intrusion, but I needed to understand. I needed to know the true cost of that coffee to you. When I learned about your son's medical needs, the overdue rent, your dream of culinary school that you had to abandon, I realized you didn't just give my mother $5. You gave her your security for the week. You gave her Leo's grocery money. You sacrificed a piece of your own survival for a stranger. He stood up and began to pace slowly, his footsteps silent on the plush rug. It strikes me as a profound and terrible injustice that someone with a heart like yours should have to live in a state of constant struggle, while I, who sat by and did nothing, live like this. He swept a hand around the opulent room. This is all meaningless if it can't honor what truly matters. And what truly matters is human decency, what you showed my mother. He stopped in front of her, his expression resolute. I can't undo the difficulties you faced, but I can change your future. I can fix this one small absurd imbalance in the universe. I want to offer you something, Amelia, not as charity, not as a gift. Consider it a reward. A thank you from the very bottom of a son's grateful heart for being kind to his mother when he wasn't brave enough to be. He took a deep breath, and the final words landed with the weight of destiny. I want to give you a house. Amelia stared at Julian Ashworth. The words, I want to give you a house, echoing in the cavernous silence of the penthouse office. Her brain, conditioned by years of scarcity and disappointment, simply refused to process them. The statement was so far beyond the realm of possibility that her first fleeting thought was that this was some kind of elaborate, cruel joke. Her second thought was that this quiet, powerful man was certifiably insane. A short, hysterical laugh escaped her lips before she could stifle it. A house, she repeated the words, sounding absurd and foreign on her tongue. Mr. Ashworth, with all due respect, people don't just give other people houses, especially not for a cup of coffee. It was never about the coffee. Amelia, Julian said, his voice patient and unwavering, as if he had anticipated her disbelief. And yes, they do, when the reason is important enough. He stood and walked back to the panoramic window, gesturing for her to join him. Reluctantly, as if in a trance, she rose and stood beside him, the entire city sprawling beneath them, like a map of a life she was no longer a part of. He pointed towards a cluster of deep green hills southwest of the city, an exclusive old money area known for its beautiful sprawling properties and canopies of ancient Douglas firs. It's on Hawthorne Hill, he said, his voice taking on a softer, more nostalgic tone. My father built it. He was a carpenter before he was a businessman, and he put his soul into that place. I can still smell the sawdust. My mother planted the climbing roses on the front trellis herself. He paused, lost in a memory. It's been empty for years, ever since my father passed, and I moved my mother to a more manageable single-story residence closer to her doctors. It's a place filled with memories. But it has become a monument, a museum. It's been silent for too long. A house like that, it has a spirit, and its spirit is dying. It needs laughter. It needs the smell of baking bread. It needs a family. It needs to be a home again. He turned to look at her, and the sincerity in his eyes was so profound, it made her want to look away. I saw you with your son, Amelia. I see the way you fight for him. That house has 5 bedrooms, a garden big enough for a dozen 6-year-olds to wage epic adventures in, and a kitchen that a certain aspiring pastry chef could only dream of. He gave her a small, knowing smile. I know about your dream, Amelia, the one you had to put on hold. It's not right that a dream like that should die because the world is hard. Tears began to well in Amelia's eyes, hot and overwhelming. This was too much. It was a fantasy, a daydream made real, and she felt a terrifying sense of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped away and she was floating. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I can't possibly accept something like this. It's too much, is it? He countered gently, his gaze piercing. Let me be frank. I'm a man who deals in numbers that have lost all meaning. I can move markets with a phone call. I can buy and sell companies like they're chess pieces. But for all that power, I couldn't protect my own mother from being humiliated in a coffee shop. For all my wealth, I couldn't buy her dignity back in that moment. But you did. With $4.75, you couldn't afford to spend. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to an intense confidential level. What is the value of a mother's dignity? To me, it is infinite. You showed up for her when I didn't. You treated her like a human being, not an inconvenience. Amelia, what you see out this window, this company, this tower, all of it, it means nothing to me compared to her. You gave me back a piece of my faith in humanity. What is an empty house? A house that brings me more sadness than joy right now compared to that. Oh, just then, Mr. Davies re-entered the room, followed by a wide-eyed Leo. He has a whole city made of Legos, Leo exclaimed, running to Amelia and wrapping his arms around her legs, oblivious to the monumental conversation he had just interrupted. Julian's intense expression softened instantly as he knelt to Leo's level. You like it? That's my model of downtown Tokyo. Maybe you can build one just like it in your new playroom. He then straightened up and took a simple, elegant black folder from Mr. Davis, handing it to Amelia. Her hands trembled so much she could barely take it. Inside, he said, is the deed to the house at 714 Hawthorne Crest Drive. It has been transferred to your name effective immediately. It is, of course, mortgage-free. The property taxes have been prepaid for the next 20 years through a trust. Also inside is a financial portfolio managed by Mr. Davis, which will provide you with a substantial annual income. You will never have to worry about a rent notice or a medical bill again. And finally, there is a letter of acceptance in a fully funded, open-ended scholarship for you to re-enroll at the Oregon Culinary Institute. Start next semester or 10 years from now. It will be there when you are ready. With trembling fingers, Amelia opened the folder. She saw her name, Amelia Rose Evans, on official-looking documents. She saw the address. She saw financial statements with numbers so large they seemed typographical errors. It was real. This was all real. The dam of composure she had maintained for years finally broke. The tears she had been holding back began to fall freely silent, hot tracks of relief and disbelief. All the nights she had cried herself to sleep, worrying about money, all the days she had spent on her aching feet, all the fear and the struggle, it was all washing away in this surreal, impossible moment. There is one condition, Julian said, his voice gentle. Amelia looked up, her heart skipping a beat, a flicker of suspicion returning. There was always a catch. The garden has a beautiful old stone bench under a weeping willow tree. My mother and I used to sit there for hours, I would ask that once a week, perhaps on Sunday afternoons, you allow an old woman and her son to come and sit on that bench for a while. She may not remember you, Amelia. Her memory is fading, but I will. I will always remember what you did for us." Overwhelmed by the simplicity and sincerity of his request, Amelia could only nod, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. That evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a different car, a discreet but luxurious SUV driven by Mr. Davies, took Amelia and Leo away from the gleaming tower. They drove away from the noise and grime of her part of the city, climbing into the quiet, winding roads of Hawthorne Hill. The air grew cleaner, scented with pine and damp earth. Massive trees formed a canopy over the road, and beautiful stately homes sat nestled behind old stone walls. "Are we going to a castle, Mommy?" Leo asked, his face pressed against the window. "Something like that, my love," Amelia whispered, her own eyes wide with wonder. Mr. Davies turned onto a private lane marked Hawthorne Crest Drive. He stopped before a set of wrought-iron gates which swung open silently. They proceeded up a long, curving driveway, lined with towering trees, and then the house came into view. It wasn't a sterile modern mansion of glass and steel. It was a masterpiece of stone and dark timber, with a steep slate-tiled roof and ivy climbing the walls. Every window was lit from within, casting a warm, welcoming glow that seemed to push back the twilight. It didn't look like a house. It looked like a home that had been waiting for them. Mr. Davies parked the car and came around to open her door. He handed her a single, heavy, ornate brass key. "Welcome home, Miss Evans." Amelia took the key, its weight a solid, tangible anchor in the swirling sea of her emotions. She walked with Leo to the massive oak front door. For a moment, she just stood there, her hand hovering over the keyhole. This was the threshold between her old life and her new one. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she slid the key into the lock and turned. The door swung open into a grand foyer with a soaring ceiling and a gracefully curving staircase. The air inside smelled of beeswax old wood and a faint, pleasant scent of dried lavender. Directly ahead, through a wide archway, was a sunken living room where a fire was already crackling merrily in a floor-to-ceiling stone fireplace. The room was filled with deep, comfortable-looking sofas, and the walls were lined with built-in bookshelves groaning with hundreds of books. On the mantelpiece, amongst tasteful decorations, were framed family photos, a smiling couple on their wedding day, a young boy with a gap-toothed grin holding a fish. Julian. Wow. Leo breathed, his small voice echoing in the grand space. He let go of her hand and ran into the living room, his sneakers squeaking on the polished hardwood floors. Amelia followed him, her hand trailing along the smooth, cool plaster of the wall. She saw that the welcome basket from Julian's office was on the coffee table next to a perfectly constructed Lego spaceship. Mr. Davies smiled. "Mr. Ashworth arranged for a few essentials. The pantry and refrigerator are fully stocked. He thought you shouldn't have to worry about groceries for your first few nights." He then led her towards the back of the house. "I believe this is the room you'll be most interested in." He pushed open a swinging door and Amelia gasped. It was the kitchen from her dreams. It was enormous, with a massive marble-topped island in the center. A professional 6-burner Wolf range sat against one wall, with a set of gleaming copper pots and pans hanging from a rack above it. The refrigerator was a restaurant-grade glass door, Sub-Zero. She ran her hand over the cool marble, her fingertips tracing the gray veins in the stone. She imagined rolling out dough for croissants, piping delicate macarons, the scent of vanilla and caramel, filling this incredible space. For the first time, her dream didn't feel like a dusty, forgotten relic. It felt like a promise. They explored the rest of the house. There was a cozy library, a formal dining room, and 4 guest bedrooms, each beautifully appointed. Finally, Mr. Davies led them up the stairs to a room at the end of the hall. The door was painted a cheerful sky blue. He opened it to reveal a child's paradise. The walls were covered in a hand-painted mural of planets and stars. A bed was shaped like a rocket ship, and in the corner, a massive table was covered with what seemed like every Lego set in existence. Leo let out a squeal of pure joy and dove right in. The last room was the master suite. It was a sanctuary of calm, decorated in soft creams and blues, with a large bed piled high with pillows and a fluffy duvet. French doors led out to a small stone balcony. Amelia stepped outside into the crisp night air. The balcony overlooked the expansive backyard garden, which was bathed in the soft glow of landscape lighting. And there, just as Julian had described, was a majestic weeping willow tree, its long branches gently swaying in the breeze. Beneath it sat a simple, weathered stone bench. Standing there listening to the joyful sounds of her son playing in his new room, surrounded by a peace and security, she had never known the full reality of the day washed over her. It had all started with a choice, a $4 choice made from the heart. She hadn't known she was being watched. She hadn't expected a reward. But in a world that so often felt cold and transactional, her one small act of grace had rippled outwards, touching the heart of a lonely billionaire and changing her life and her son's life forever. The crushing weight she had carried on her shoulders for years was gone, replaced by a feeling so light it felt like she could fly. It wasn't just freedom, it was a new beginning, a blank page, a chance to finally build the life she had only ever dared to dream of. Amelia's story is a powerful reminder that we are all connected in ways we can't possibly imagine. Her journey from the brink of eviction to a life of security wasn't luck. It was the direct result of a single, compassionate choice. In a moment of crisis, when it would have been easier to look away, she chose to see another person's pain and act. She didn't know the elderly woman was a billionaire's mother, and it didn't matter. She treated her with kindness because it was the right thing to do. This story proves that the ripples of our actions, no matter how small, can travel farther than we think. You never know whose life you might touch, or how that single act of grace might come back to you. So if Amelia's incredible true life story moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that goodness still exists in the world. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories that prove one person can and does make a difference. What's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Let us know in the comments below.